Hello there everybody, my name is Dean and as you know I'm the guy from the Getty92 channel here on YouTube with another vlog series, and today I wanted to talk about the special events that happened 20 years before on this day, and therefore this is kind of a vlogging series, you know that. We will continue with the Rush stuff with the beginning of next week, and therefore I thought, because I had a flu actually, I thought that I wanted to throw in another vlog series there. So basically what I wanted to talk with you guys today about is a very heavy topic, and I actually wanted to let you know what 9/11 meant for Germany, for Europe in general, and of the overall outcome. Because over all of these years there are more questions raised than are questions answered actually. So therefore I would like to talk to you guys about the 9/11 thing, and let me first of all say that what happened on the 11th of September 2001 was probably the worst thing that could happen in the 2000er years, and it still remains in everybody's mind, it still remains in everybody's heart at least. And as you might know, I'm 28 years old, and 9/11 happened 20 years ago, so I was 8 years old actually when it happened. And there's no ill will about it. I have a terrible mind. I hardly remember things. For example, if you wanted to ask me what I was eating yesterday, I hardly couldn't answer that because I already forgot that. So my mind is really simple-minded in that way, if you wanted to put it in that way. So I was 8 years old, and like I said before, I hardly remember anything that happened when I was just born and until the age of like 21, 22, where I actually was gonna get married for the first time. So these times still remain like a secret to me. But on some weird level, I still do remember the 9/11 thing, 2001, when it actually happened. So I would like to share a little bit of story there with you guys. So like I said before, I was 8 years old, and on that day, I actually, when all that stuff happened, and you know there's a time difference between America and Europe in general, so it happened around, I think it was like 12 or 1 p.m. here in Germany. And I remember that day. I don't know why I remember that day, but I remember that day very clearly because when that all stuff happened, I actually had a phone. And this is something very unusual. You have to imagine being in the year of 2001, who had a phone back in those days. So, but I had a phone, and I was actually outside when the first plane hit the World Trade Center. I was actually playing outside soccer with some friends from back in all of those days of elementary school. And I remember that I got a call from, I think it was my mother or the guy that was together with my mother on that occasion. And they told me that I should come home. And I didn't understand because, like I said before, I was 8 years old. An 8-year-old boy from Germany who was just playing soccer with his friends doesn't know what is going on around the world. So I came home. And I remember that being actually on the way home, that people were actually talking on the streets about some stuff I couldn't understand yet. So I went home as quickly as possible because I somehow felt that something terrible must have happened. But what I thought actually was that something at home happened because, like I said before, when you're an 8-year-old boy from Germany, you don't think about the United States of America. You don't even know that the USA exists on that point. So I came home and I turned on the TV, or the TV was actually already turned on by my mother, I think. And I saw a news program on German television, and they were actually showing the first plane hitting the World Trade Center. I remember sitting there because they were all talking about stuff I couldn't clearly understand, because when I came home the plane already hit and they weren't showing the footage of the actual explosion thing, because I think there is no such footage of the first, or there is a footage of the first plane hitting the World Trade Center, but they weren't showing that. So I actually saw, as an 8-year-old boy, I saw big like skyscrapers, two big fat skyscrapers, and one of them actually was beginning to smoke. to get smoked. I don't know how to say it in English, but you get the idea. So there was smoke coming out of the building, and I couldn't understand. And the moments and minutes and hours passed by. The second plane crashed into the second tower. And therefore, at that point, and you guys know that because you basically had all around the world the same information as I had in Germany. It doesn't mean if you are in America directly or in Germany, you had the same footage that was presented to you. So there were no talks about the Pentagon thing at first, and there were no basic talks about World Trade Center 7, which I will get later on that video. That magic day, in some way, it was magic because it's a terrible thing that happened there, but it was magic in the way that this doesn't happen usually. This doesn't happen in a lifetime. So the year actually passed by, and every year there were some kind of like anniversaries when they were saying it's 1 year after 9/11 and it's 5 years after 9/11 and 10 years and so on and so on. And I have never been a political person in my whole life actually, but I started to get political about like a year ago, 2 years ago actually, when I was doing some work and I was spending a lot of time home due to the coronavirus. So I was trapped actually inside at home. So I was always kind of like interested in watching documentaries about 9/11, either the official side, but I was already watching the documentaries about people who were arguing that this kind of stuff was like planned from some governments, which I will slightly touch that point in the later video, because there was some major stuff going on there still 20 years after that, where it's still not really clear to everybody what really happened and how it happened and who was responsible and who was in charge for these happenings on 9/11. So like I said before, this is a day, even like after 5, 10, 15, 20 years, it's a day that you don't forget. You know, every time you look on the phone and you see, oh, today is 9/11, you know immediately what this day means to the world. It doesn't only mean something to the United States of America, it sure does, but it means a lot to the world, because every time 9/11 hits the date, you constantly get reminded about how crazy terrorism works these days and how crazy terrorism has worked like 20 or 30, 40 years ago. We have terrorism in Germany a lot of years ago, and so therefore, like I said before on the heresy video, if you happen to be a Rush fan and you came there because you were interested in my person, so I was already talking about the heresy Rush music, and it's kind of like the same thing that your parents or grandparents gonna tell you about terrorism in Germany. So this happened like some few times in Germany back in like the last, I don't know, 50, 60 years. So apparently 9/11 feels a lot like a birthday in some way, but a birthday that you don't want to celebrate necessarily. So therefore, every time the 9/11 thing comes up, there were always these thoughts about why does it happen? Who was in charge of that? Why was there like the war of Afghanistan, which has been a war before 2001, but it was focused primarily on the Afghanistan war after the happenings of 9/11. And I was constantly thinking about George W. Bush, which I happened to like these days as a person, because I know he's a painter, he's an artist, and therefore I do actually admire him in some way. But having the understanding of what his government was doing back in those days, not only the 9/11 period, such a disgrace to the United States. But I don't want to go into detail, because everybody has their own opinion about politics. So therefore, I was never really happy. Looking back now, I wasn't happy about the decisions of George W. Bush. But I totally get that people appreciate him still. So no hate if you happen to like him, cool. If you don't like him, well, that's fine too. So, but besides George W. Bush, I constantly think about Osama bin Laden then. And I think about the big news when they finally found him after like 7 years. After 9/11, they finally got to kill him. And this raises some questions which I will get later on that video, because there's so much time that passed by with the death of Osama bin Laden, with the war in Afghanistan for more than 20 years. There were so many questions raised lately when you're a bit into politics. So, but I will get to that. This might be a long video. I'm sorry for that, but this is a vlog series, so these are my thoughts, and maybe you think the same as I do. And if you don't agree with the things that I say, it's still okay. You can have your own opinion about 9/11, your own opinion about the US government, about the Taliban, or whatsoever. But every time the 9/11 hits, I know a guy on Facebook, and I don't want to mention his name, and I don't want to mention his occupation. He will hardly never see this video, but I know a guy on Facebook, and he had a brother who was actually in the firefighter department of New York City, and therefore he actually died on the 9/11 happening as a firefighter. And I get reminded constantly every year about that, and this pulls me into all that kind of 9/11 things. So these are all really crazy and weird thoughts that are going on with all the 9/11 stuff. And being into politics now raises a lot of questions. For example, like the thing with the Afghanistan war, which is more than 20 years still going on. Nothing has happened so far. I mean, 2,977 US American people died on the 9/11. Everybody's talking about that. Every year, everybody's talking about that. And I actually happened to be at Ground Zero. I was there on December 2019. I was in New York City visiting Ground Zero, so I was actually witnessing the stuff that really happened. So like I said before, I actually was watching the 9/11 memorial. I was in front of there, and I saw all the police going around that place, which still is a very magical place. But like I said before, every year everybody remembers the 2,977 people that actually died on 9/11 because of the terrible happenings. But on the other hand, there was a war, and there still is a war in Afghanistan, where in total a lot of people died. I mean, 43,000 people, innocent people, died because of the war in Afghanistan. 43,000 people. And 140,000 military people, including the soldiers on the good side, like the US and like Germany, and on the other side the Taliban, around 140,000 soldiers in Taliban, plus 43,000 innocent people who are dying in Afghanistan after 20 years. This breaks up into more than 200,000 people that already died. And this raises the question, how successful is it to invade a country where you don't have really a place to stay? I mean, it was completely right from the US government to go into Afghanistan to fight Al-Qaeda, to fight Osama bin Laden. And I would always say that it was the right decision. Being there for 20 years and then departing after 20 years because of just thinking, and thanks Joe Biden for that, you dumbass, and thinking that Afghanistan and all these states around will get comfortable with each other after the United States left, and even Germany. German soldiers left this year Afghanistan. And then all of a sudden, after 20 years of fighting terrorism in Afghanistan, the Taliban are back on track and they're ruling the country. And this raises the question, what has been so wrong for over 20 years that 350,000 soldiers in total population of every soldier that has been there from the good side, that 350,000 soldiers couldn't manage to bring peace to a destroyed country. So there are some questions like, why were there no mass attackings on the Al-Qaeda and ISIS that are ruling now? I mean, the Taliban are growing up. Guys that have happened to know Osama bin Laden when they were 10 years old, they may be 20 years old now, and they are fighting for terrorism. And this is something that I don't understand, especially when I was reading into all of that stuff, that after 20 years, after so much people that have died, there was still no peace. There was so less work that the soldiers have done in terms of really getting democracy going on there. And I always will, and I always want to defend the US soldiers especially, because 70%, and you may know that, 70% of all the US soldiers were at the age of 20 and 29. So every soldier, or 70% of the total US soldiers, they were basically in the same age as I am. And if I have to imagine then that fighting a war for like 5 or 6 years, depending on how long you are in there in Afghanistan, and you're getting home, it's of course totally all right that these people have no afterlife after these terrible happenings, after what they have seen. And so therefore I will never blame the soldiers that fought for all of us there, which I'm thankful for that. I will never blame them, but I will hardly blame all of the governments that have been there for 20 years, not only the US government, including the German government. We have been there since from the beginning of 2001. I blame them because there were so many political decisions that were wrong, as we now all see with the Taliban taking over Afghanistan. These things could have been avoided, and if the politics were made in the right way, 43,000 guys from Afghanistan, these innocent people, they still could live. I mean, the 70,000 people, the 70,000 soldiers that died in Afghanistan, most of them could still have been alive if the decisions of the politics would have been made right. But they haven't, as we now see. So, and this raises another question. How are we in the terms of the world, how are we going to deal with terrorism in general? What does it mean? So you can spend 20 years in a foreign country and try to make it look as a democratic country then, but after you're departing from that country, it's still like 20 years before that. So I have no answer to that. If I would have an answer to that, I would send it to, I don't know, Angela Merkel. She's still in charge until the 22nd of September this year. After 16 years, she's still in charge. If I would have an idea to get the Taliban get stopped, I would drop that information as soon as possible. But I have no answers to that. As you might know, there were the Republic of Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Australia, the United States of America, Great Britain and Germany, who fought against the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and rumors say some Pakistani were involved in that on the other side. But then I took a look on the map of the world, and then I asked myself, where has Russia been all the time? Where has China been all the time? They were so close to Afghanistan and to Iraq, and I will not cover the Iraq thing because this is a whole different thing there. But Russia and China have been so close to Afghanistan, and they still have. Just look at the map, you will see that they didn't do shit. They hardly didn't do anything. I have never heard about some Chinese military going into Afghanistan to save the world. I have never heard about Russian military going into Afghanistan to save the world. I haven't heard that. What I've heard is the same countries as Germany, Great Britain, United States of America, Australia, Uzbekistan, and in the fucking Republic of Afghanistan. The ordinary people of Afghanistan who are against the Taliban, or who are still against the Taliban. We were all fighting this thing, which is a massive problem, because this is a world problem. You know, these kind of like Middle East thing with Afghanistan and Iraq, and I will say it again, I will not get to Iraq, but these whole crises down there, they will have an effect on the world. Where has France been all the time? Where has Spain been all the time? Or Italy all the time on the war of Afghanistan? You can't just hide away and say, well, that's not part of our history, so therefore the United States are our big friends and they will handle everything, same as Germany. We are in every war, I think, and we have fucked up bigly in the last century, so don't ever ask Germany about military choices or military advices, we are the worst guys to ask because we already fucked up in so many ways in the last century. But this still raises the question, where have been all the other countries that have the possibility to get into these eastern countries and to save actually the world? But they weren't doing it. And with the departure of the United States and especially Germany in Afghanistan, the world will be fucked. The world will be fucked until the world destroys itself, I think. There will be at some way, there are actually a few possibilities how the world is going to end. And I don't think the climate change will end the world, because we people on the world are dumb enough to destroy the world before climate change actually sets in. So I think if the Afghanistan thing will not be handled in the correct way, and therefore why do we have NATO? Why do we have a European Union of like 10 countries, of 20 countries, and they are not doing anything, hardly anything, to defend the people in Afghanistan, defend the innocent people in Afghanistan, and to fight the terrorism? Why do we have then a NATO system? I don't know. It's all economics. It's all economics all day long. But if it comes down to some war, well, there's our big friends over the United States of America, and I'm feeling very sorry for you guys that you always have to get into so much trouble because the world sucks. I'm sorry for that. But I blame the whole European Union, I blame China, I blame Russia. They all could have helped out, and within like 5 years there could be democracy going on in Afghanistan without Taliban. And there could be democracy in general in the eastern part of the world without any kind of terrorism, if every country that has a clear mindset about to say the democratic way is the right way for every country, they should have got into that Afghanistan thing. But I'm not a politician, I'm not the leader of Germany, but if I would be the leader of Germany, I would force the other European countries to go down there and to save the world. And this is every time the thing that comes into my mind when it comes down to 9/11. So guys, thank you very much for listening to these stuff, to my opinions about 9/11. I'm sure I could have continued for 10 more minutes about the stuff of actually on 9/11, but there were some things with guys saying that 9/11 was an inside job. It never really happened, and I don't want to get into that because everybody has their own opinion. So guys, see you next week with new episodes of Rush, and I hope you will have a very good 9/11. Celebrate the way that you want to celebrate that day. I will watch some documentaries because this topic really interests me in so many ways. And on the other hand, it makes me so angry that the world doesn't fight enough against terrorism. So guys, next week, new Rush episodes. And for the next weekend, I will have another vlog thing coming out because my girlfriend and I, we're gonna do some mini golfing, and we are gonna to record that mini golfing thing, and I will show you that. So guys, thanks, have a great Saturday, Sunday, whenever you're watching this, and see you on Monday with your new daily dose of Rush. This was Dean of the Getty 92 channel. Bye. And now it starts to rain, I have to go inside now.